Hey folks, welcome back to the shop. This is our second video in the playlist of building this burnt bike back up into a flat track racing bike, and then we are going to give it away to one of our subscribers. And so you and I are going to have fun doing that. So without further ado, Abdu, let's get started. Welcome back. So our plans for this video is to go ahead and get this motor out, and I'll bring you in here and let you see the cylinder walls. Man, I'm so happy with this. I believe this is going to have good compression. I don't see any reason it wouldn't. You know, I didn't know, like, do I go ahead and pull this base off and look at the rings and rehone the cylinder walls and then get the base gasket and put it back together? Or, you know, do we test the compression by putting the old cylinder head back on and the head and torquing it down, putting the starter in, hitting the button, and just to check our compression ratios, and then taking the head back off and putting a new head gasket on? I don't know. Or do we just go ahead and go with what it appears to look like, put the new head gasket on, put the head on, put everything back together, and then find out it has a low compression in one of the cylinders? So I think the safest bet for us, and I want to give one of our subscribers a good bike, not something half done. So today we're going to pull this motor out. We're going to start working on this frame, and in working on this frame, there's a lot of tabs on here that we're just not going to use with my plans. My plans are this, and I hope you're going to like it. I want to run a red frame, and I'm going to do we're going to do metal work together. And I'll just take this old rag as an example. I'm not going to do my metal work laying over this like this and make a, you know, a rear cowl. Is that what it's called? Rear cowl? A rear end on this bike like this. Because if I'm going to powder coat this frame red to stand out, I really want to show it. And so what I'm going to do is take pieces of sheet metal and go behind it like this. So you'll see the frame, but it'll still be covered in metal. We'll go all around the bike. We're going to leave this open. So today's going to be all about the frame once we get the motor out. Got to remove this shock that's going to definitely give us trouble, and we'll have to write down some cuss words. We'll go ahead and get this rear tire off once we do that, and this, we'll just pull this off probably. Front forks are going to be the hardest. Now, as you can see, if you watched the last video, I've already took the handlebars off. I've already taken most of the things off, the foot pegs and things like that. Had a couple of broken bolts, nothing major. I'll show you what I think I'm going to do up here to make it more for the track and not for how it was set up originally. But to get these forks off, I don't know if I'm going to be able to save them or not. And I appreciate you guys. You know, some of you guys have commented and said, hey, we want to donate to what you're doing to give this bike away. And so there's parts going to be coming, and I really appreciate that, guys, because building this bike up is not free. And at this point in my channel, I'm not getting any income from these videos, and that's not why I do these videos. I do these videos to maybe help you out in your own garage, to bless others with a bike that they might not could have gotten any other way, and to just have fun along the way. I like having conversations and journeying along with people, and I love investing in people. One of the greatest things you can do in this life is take the talents and the gifts that you've been blessed by and invest that in others. teach others that same thing. So I hope that in your journey through my shop work and what we do here as a channel, I hope that you pass that along one day as well. So let me get you in here. Let's get started. Enough philosophizing. All right, so here's what I was talking about, those cylinder walls. You can see the crosshatch in there. I mean, they're still good. All the cylinders look like that. I just don't know, guys. I think it would, yeah, you know, we're not going to play that game. We're just going to do it right. We're going to take this base off, this jug off, this cylinder off, and do it right. Take the rings out, take the pistons off, inspect everything down in there, new base gasket, new head gasket, all that. So that way I know when I sleep at night, when this goes off to a subscriber, that it's good. Here's where's going to be our problem, getting this old rusty thing off. This is so stiff, it will not even bounce. You cannot get any movement out of this spring at all. It's trash, it's toast. Now, when I talk about taking these forks off, there you go. This is melted plastic. I'm hoping that we can wire brush it on an angle grinder around here and clean all of this up right here so that we can slide this fork off, because these forks slide. So you'll take this, undo this clamp, and then these forks slide out of the top triple tree and the bottom. So all of this has to be clean and smooth and shiny and slick, even this up here, to get this out. I suspect I'm going to have to be beaten for a while on this up here. So we'll see. Then we can, once we get this off as well, we'll go ahead and drop the motor. Now the motor comes out on these frames with this bottom frame. So we can just undo these bolts here on both sides. We can leave this part of the bottom frame connected to the motor, which is right here. And then we can unbolt these two right here from the back of the frame. And then this motor is free from the bottom. And then there's also, let me see if I can get you in here. There's also a mounting bolt right here that runs all the way through here. And then there's one on the bottom as well. Where are you at? There you go. Right back there. So we'll take those off. So let's go ahead and get this frame on, this motor out of this frame, and then we can start working on all the other stuff for the frame. I'm praying that these do not break, because we do need these, and that came off really, really easy. So that's kind of scary. Now I give you a pointer with rusty bolts. For some reason, rusty bolts seem to heat up a lot quicker than clean bolts when you're unbolting something. I assume it to be maybe the friction in it. So as I pull this bolt out, if I was to put it in my hand, it'd be warm. It'd be almost hot. So when you use impact drivers on these, it'll get them too hot and it'll snap the head right off, or snap the bolt still in the thread. I don't want that on these. Some other areas that we're not going to reuse, I don't mind. But on these, I certainly don't want that. And there you can feel it's warm just by doing that. So if you were to put an impact on these, you'd be in trouble. So if you ever get one that's really rusty, take your time undoing it. Maybe just a turn like that. Let it rest. Go back down, do another slow turn. You want to do that, especially on smaller bolts, if you don't want them breaking off. Now I did spray some PB Blaster on these bolts heads and tried to get it down, you know, where it would run in between here. That's why it looks kind of wet. I do have a jack stand. underneath so that the motor will not give way on us. All right, this is one of those bolts I was just talking about. So I'm gonna go slow, let it cool back down a little bit. I barely got it out. I don't know if you can see that or not. Those threads are smooth as butter. And I am surprised that that came out, but I'm so thankful that it did. Bottom two bolts on the left side of the bike is kind of behind this shifter lever here. Now I went to take the shifter lever off this bolt, and when I did, it snapped right in two. So the bolt is still in here. Now I was gonna replace this anyway. It's rusted, the boots are all burned up. So I was gonna replace this whole thing anyway. However, I can't get this cover off. I can't really get to these good without this off. So that bolt broken off in there restricts me from pulling this whole thing off because that bolt rides on a recess in this shaft. And even if your bolt gets loose, this will not come off. Now you might not be able to shift, it might be sloppy, but you will not lose your shifter. So it's made like that for a reason, but if the bolt ever breaks off, you're in bad news. Well, it did. So what I'm gonna do is just go ahead and cut here at the adjuster to get this off, to get here. There, now we have easy access to our bolts. And like I said, I will deal with this when we get the motor on the table, not on a frame. These are coming off really easy. They have a nut on the back, so you don't have to go as, I don't have to go as slow on these. But I don't like reusing bolts or nuts that I know have had heat on them because it weakens them. And so we will be replacing almost every nut and bolt on this bike for that reason. And now we'll just do the same on the other side. So now the only thing holding this motor into this frame is just one long bolt. As you can see, the bolt right there that comes all the way through here, and then one on the bottom. So in order to get this bolt out, I'm gonna have to do some cleaning up because plastic has melted down over the head of this bolt and down in here where this exposed part of the bolt is. So I'm gonna get a flathead and a hammer and kind of try to chip some of this plastic off, maybe clean out some debris in this channel here, and then we'll break the top free. We won't take the top out yet. We'll just break it free. Then we'll work on the bottom. Go ahead and take the bottom completely out, and then we'll slide the top out. Seems like it popped free pretty good for us. All right, so I just went ahead and took the nut off. And again, I'm leaving the bolt in for now. And now we'll work on this bottom bolt. Now on the left side, to get to this bottom bolt, it is behind this here. I couldn't get this cover off because this bolt broke off for the shifter. I noticed that it had a big hole right here and a crack. So I'm like, well, I'm not going to give that to one of our subscribers like that. And dirt, especially on a dirt track, get up in the front sprocket. So I just did a man cave delete, as we're going to replace it anyway. And then I could get to this bolt right there. And you can see all this trash up in here. All right, I got my wrench in there holding the other side, the nut on the other side, and I'll take this bolt all the way out. we go. Again, I'll be replacing all nuts and bolts that had heat damage. This one being underneath the bike really didn't, but it's rusted pretty good, and well, the threads look okay. Maybe just replace this nut and just slide this bolt out. And the frame, the bottom frame and the motor is now officially disconnected from this frame. So we'll go ahead and let the jack stand down a little bit that's holding this motor up. And there are spacers between this and here on the back. So you'll want to take note of that. So here's the spacer that sits right here. So we'll put this back on this bolt, this top mounting bolt, so we don't lose it. We can clean this up and reuse it. So we'll go ahead and work on the shocks now. Get this top shock bolt out. With this shock being seized up like it is, I don't see it releasing any tension for us. I don't think we have to worry about that. It did give a little spring, but not much. To get the shock out, it's held on the bottom and on this arm here. Now, like I said, we'll probably go ahead and remove these two on both sides and this main bolt here to get this lower swing arm or lower shock link out, inspect everything, clean everything up. But right now we'll go ahead and undo this shock here. 14 on this side on the nut, 12 on the other. Hammer this up a little bit. Now I'm going to go ahead and remove this link bolt right here and nut. So it's 17 on this side and I believe a 14 on the other. So it should, there we go. Should come up nice and good for us now. Now before we go any further with this, we could go ahead and take the rear wheel off and take the front forks off and the front rim. But I think that's going to leave my frame unstable, and I want it still so that we can start taking these tabs off. So I think a good idea for us today at this point is to go ahead and let's start taking tabs that we're going to need on this frame off. That'll begin to give us the look of how it's going to be, and then we can go from there. Let's start working on this rear tail section of the deleting unnecessities, which on the tail is quite a bit of stuff. So let's just start chopping. Cutting it, leaving a little bit of lip here because I'm going to go back with a flap disc and smooth it down so that I don't, with a cutoff wheel, get up into any of this tube. I want this tube to be nice and smooth and rounded, just like it was before they welded this on. So to prevent me from having an accident of cutting too deep and getting into a tube, I always cut a little bit extra off, leave me a little bit of room, and then the flap disc, I can go back with a 40 grit flap disc and make quick work of this. Even just a grinding stone would get down to it, and then the flap disc just to fine tune it. This can go ahead and come off, just all this top part contraption. I am going to leave this back on because I like the angle of it. When we put the metal on the inside, it's going to look really sharp. So I want to keep that and go ahead and take this off. To do that, I'm going to get renew my wheel, get a bigger wheel in there. So let's keep cutting. Now on this cut, I noticed that I was cutting toward this tube, so I stopped that angle, grabbed a bigger wheel, cutoff wheel, and came at a different angle, and that saved me from getting into this tube. So if you start a cut, you by no means have to keep in that same groove. Get out of it if you know you're going in the wrong way, make a different cut, and it's all the same. So already you can see just how smooth and sleek this back is going to look, especially when we put our metal on the inside and start filling it in. And I'm going to show you something up here. I had originally was going to cut this out because this all was just a cowl on the back, and the seat came here and the rear seat come up on here, and I thought, well, I don't need a rear seat, so I'll just cut this off. Well, when I did, I was looking at how long the seat would be to come all the way back here. I said, man, that's way too long. So what I decided to do is to bring the seat to here, have a little back rest for your back. And then in here, we're gonna actually place a little box for some tools, a little toolkit in here. And then we will metal over this back. Maybe leather over it, I'm not sure. But anyway, I think that's gonna be a nice little addition. Put a little lock key on it, and that'll be a good place for a little storage. Not gonna be putting registration in there because it's not street legal, but at least you can have some tools to tinker on your bike while you're out on the track or in the field. Now, as you can see, we did cut the rear pegs on this side. However, on the other side, we need to pay caution. Well, not caution, we just need to watch. And here's why. If we cut this off right here, which is your rear peg mount, there's also a hole right here that mounts your exhaust, your muffler. So I don't want to lose the ability to mount a muffler, and I don't have to want to weld some new piece when the piece is already here. So I think what's our best bet is to cut by this hole. We'll go ahead and cut this mount off for the rear pegs, but cut up by this hole and then make a cut angling down so that it looks like this whole brace here is just for that muffler hang. Now, we don't need two. We could get rid of one and just have this come down, but this is kind of off-centered from here, and I don't know how it would look. It might look fine, just come down here and cut over. But I figure with two braces, it'd be pretty stiff to hold the muffler. That way, in case the bike falls over on the right side, if there's just one mounting place here, this might push back into the tire. So with two, it's less likely to do that. And so I think just cutting here at an angle and then cutting here would be our best bet. I'm just going to make a clean cut from here down to this point, and then we'll take a grinding wheel, since this is so thick of a piece, smooth it out. You can see how thick of a piece of metal that was right there. This is not as thick, so it should cut fine. I'm going to cut from this tip to this point that we made, best I can. So from here, we've deleted the foot peg. We got a nice line coming down. This tip right here, we will of course round off, so it'll look like the bracket was made to just round back up and come back up. So I don't think it's going to look odd or out of place. And now I really had to ponder on what to do up here, and here's why. This cavity here is so big. The motor, when its head nulls on, comes up almost to the tip of this. I'm not going to run a stock tank on it because I think the tank makes it look like a sports bike. And so I scratched my head and wrote down some designs, and I think I've come up with, I'm going to run a flat piece from this side to this side of sheet metal all the way up to about the top of this neck, almost to the top of the gusset here for the neck of the bike. And so it's going to be completely flat. I'm going to run a cylinder tank, which is a gas tank that looks like a long fire extinguisher. So I'm going to run that down the middle, anchored in on top of this sheet metal. And I'll probably run some braces under so it can hold the weight of that tank with it full of gas. And now in doing that and running that cylinder through here, that'll give me a flat piece, and I can actually put gauges on one side or both sides. I can put a racing switch, which has got the flip up and turn the key on, push the button, the nice little carbon fiber setup that you see in race cars. And so we can run that on one side and maybe a gauge down below, and run all my gauges, kind of angle them in to run, and then have the cylinder of gas in the middle. I think that's going to look unique and pretty bussin'. But tell me what you think down in the comments. Clack it down there and let me know what you think about this. If we do that, I'm not going to need these tabs here. I'm not going to need this tank mount up here. Remember, the tank is going to be a cylinder, and it's going to be mounted to our sheet metal. And then I'm going to make some anchors that'll run across here to hold the weight of that. As it gets up here narrow, it's going to be stronger, of course, but here in this wide valley, I worry about it flexing, chipping the paint. So I think we're going to do a red frame and white on the metal. So it'll be white painted here, and either a stainless steel tank, or we could paint it like a fire extinguisher, red to match our frame, put the fire extinguisher stickers on it, but it be actually our gas tank. I think that might look pretty cool. But let me know in the comments, any concerns that I'm not thought of. You might say that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard of, and that's fine. Just let me know your thoughts on it. But I think that'll be a really unique flat track bike. So to do that, I really have to commit before I start cutting tabs. Now, these tabs just up here hold the plastic that was originally on the bike. We don't need that anyway. But this right here, if I do delete this, I would have to re-weld it to mount a stock tank. But I don't want to go with the stock tank. It's fat, it's huge, it stands up. I just don't like it, don't want it. Alright, so as you can tell, all of our tabs are off that we're not going to use, and I think it really makes the bike look sleeker, more streamlined, especially back here. Once we clean this up, start putting our metal in, put our little toolbox in here, decide if we're going to do metal over the top or maybe a little leather, I don't know, maybe a fiberglass piece on the back. No, not fiberglass, metal piece on the back with a number back there. I think would look pretty good. Go ahead now and put a grinding stone on and get rid of some of these high points that I left on these brackets before we start with the flat disc. They're empty, don't worry.
what's left of that mount there. Because there's going to be a cover goes over this anyway, so you won't see it. And I didn't want it sticking up. And to get into this angle, I'm afraid I'd get up in here on the top and grind the gouge out. So I don't want to do that. Oh, got a couple more holes here, and then we can go over to our flat disc and start smoothing everything out.
So as you can see, that made pretty quick work of what tabs that we had sticking out. And now I'll go back with the flap disc, smooth it all out. That'll take these high spots out. And then we'll wire brush down to the metal, and that'll give something good for the powder coater to stick to. Now the powder coating guy will clean it, so it doesn't have to be spotless. And I say, well, why did you grind these flat? Well, the reason that I did that is I'm going to probably fill these holes in that we no longer need. I might thread one, or no, actually I'm just going to fill them all in. So all these holes where like the fairing would have fit and seat bracket and all that, I don't need anymore. That's why I smoothed this out here. I guess still got a little bit of cleaning to do there. And then we'll fill these holes in, grind them back down, you'll never know. So this is now flat, and I don't want to grind too much to get this tab off because I'm afraid I'll get up on these top there. So, all right, we'll get the flap disc out and smooth all this out. All right, this is a 40 grit flap disc. So this is a little less abrasive, and this will help us kind of smooth out the metal without taking big chunks. that's left is a wire brass brush. And this one's about had it. So as you can see, the frame is going to clean up very, very nicely. Now, like I said, I did inspect the frame before deciding to take on this project, because with fire damage can weaken the structure of the frame. So I went around and beat on it pretty good with a hammer, and spots that it might look weak, like this pitting here. But this is just natural kind of pitting from it being old. As far as any damage to welds or anything, as you can see, all the factory welds are fine. Well, let's take a break because my forearms are a little tired. And I got a lot of wire brushing to do that's just kind of tedious. I won't bore you with that. But everything cleaned up good, you know, especially on the back. If we leave this exposed, this is now nice and smooth, and you would have never known that anything was actually ever welded there. So we're making good progress, but let's go ahead and get this frame off the forks and the swing arm out. Well, out of the entire project so far, the thing I've dreaded the most is getting these forks out of these triple trees. So I'm gonna have to take some time and clean the tubes up, grease them up, loosen everything, and hopefully we can slide them out. I've got the rim clamped into the front really well, so I'm hoping I can just maybe soft mallet up underneath, or even a block of wood in the sledge, and try to get the forks to come out by raising the frame up. If I can get them to move a little bit and they're easy to move, then we can go ahead and take the rim off and just slide each fork out by itself. But I'm just not sure if that's gonna be doable. I'd like to save on these forks. We can rebuild them, and that'll save us a lot of money. But putting some racing forks on would be pretty cool too, so. Well, let's jump in it and do it. Break on me. All right. See how much movement we've got. Oh, you kidding me? Oh my goodness. Why was I dreading that? Why was I dreading that? trouble at all. Wow. Not a bit of trouble. So now that we've got the hard part done, I'll go ahead and take off this center piece here that connects the two forks together, and then we'll go ahead and just raise the frame up, slide the forks out. Easy peasy. Lemon squeezy. All right, so I took the center brace off, and now they're just, I don't believe it, but they're just falling out. Falling out. That's great news. I think because they came out so easy, I think we're going to be able to reuse these, rebuild them, and get them back on the bike. Wonderful news. So we'll take this, I guess it's called a castle nut kind of thing where you tap it loose or tap it tight. Still can't move this. So we are going to have to get this castle nut off. Maybe then it'll move and drop the bottom triple tree out. And then the front will be done. And I'm going to delete this tab here, get rid of it. Because we're not running the headlight, we're not running an ignition switch up here. So no wires will be coming up through this neck. So we can go ahead and get rid of that too. Well, let's get this castle nut off first. Wow, there's your bearings. Would explain why it's not turning. There's the other bearings. And you ain't gonna believe this, but the braces look pretty good. No, that one's shot. Alright, the front was done and was surprisingly easier than I thought. Now let's move on to the rear swing arm and get that rear tire off and the swing arm. I think since this tire is so gone, we're just going to put a tire iron in between there to keep it off the rim. And I'm just going to cut it. I think that's going to be the easiest. I've got a big wheel here. I'm going to cut along my tire iron, that way if I do get down into the metal, it's not on the rim, it's on an old tire iron. It did make a mess on the lift here, but it's already a mess. And I sure didn't want all that rubber peeling off and flaking off on my tire machine. One of the worst tires I've ever seen, and it was easy to cut off. So now let's get this axle out. Man. Rusted in there for sure. We'll be doing new wheel bearings if we keep these rims, but I'm not sure if we want to keep these or go with spokes. I think spokes would look totally awesome, so I'm not sure yet what we want to do. I'm not even sure if those rims are even true anymore after the heat. They are aluminum. All right, now the last bolt nut is swing arm. Everything else is disconnected from it. So we'll just get it out, slide it out, and clean everything up. the swing arm off, I will remove these because I'm sure these bushings are just, I think there's bushings in there. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. But regardless, I am going to take these out and clean these up along with the swing arm. Now we should be able to just lift the frame up, hold the motor, out of the way there. Motor setting where it won't hurt anything. All right. Again, we'll brush this up, clean this off, get it ready for powder coating. As you can see, we've made it down to just the motor. I will keep cleaning up that frame, and then when I take a trip to the powder coater, I'll take you with me, introduce you to a good fella who does wonderful work. It's a 2-hour drive, but boy, it's worth it. When you find a good person that does good quality work, treats things like it's their own, it's worth the time and the effort to get your things to them. So the next video, we're going to take these jugs off. We're going to inspect the pistons and the rings and rehome the cylinder walls and put everything back together. Go and clean this motor up, start building it back up. So the next video, we're going to be all about the motor and getting it ready and prepared to go back in. Now, once I get the motor completed and we know it's a good running motor, then I'm going to go to powder coat, and then I'm going to start working on the metal. You and I will start working on all the metal that's going to go on the bike. The reason for that, I don't want to do all that work and put all that money invested in the bike if we got a bad motor. So we'll be doing that next video, rebuilding this motor, checking compression, maybe even getting it to fire up on the lift out of the frame. So thanks so much for watching, and tell your mom and them I said hi.